Have you ever walked into a fast food restaurant and noticed the person taking your order has gray hair and weathered hands? Someone who looks like they should be enjoying retirement, not asking if you want fries with that. They worked 40 years. They paid into the system. They did everything right. And somehow, they're still working at 72 just to keep the lights on. My name is Nick, and I spend way too much time thinking about money. If you've wondered why seniors who played by the rules are still broke, hit subscribe. What I found might change everything. Let's start with the numbers most people never see. The average Social Security retirement benefit in America is about $1,900 per month. $1,900. That sounds almost reasonable until you realize the average rent for a one-bedroom apartment has climbed past $1,500 in most metropolitan areas. We're talking about a system where the monthly benefit barely covers housing, leaving almost nothing for food, utilities, transportation, and healthcare. But here's where it gets really interesting. That $1,900 figure is the average, which means half of all retirees receive even less. The median Social Security benefit hovers closer to $1,700 monthly. For women, who often spent years out of the workforce raising children, the numbers are even grimmer. Many female retirees receive benefits under $1,400 per month. Now, you might be thinking these are people who didn't work hard enough or didn't contribute enough to the system. And if that's what you're thinking, I need to paint you a different picture. The people receiving these modest benefits aren't slackers who coasted through life. They're retired nurses, factory workers, teachers, and small business owners. They worked 40 years. They paid into Social Security every single paycheck. They did exactly what society told them to do. The truth is, there's a fundamental misunderstanding about what Social Security was actually designed to accomplish. And this misunderstanding is why millions of seniors find themselves struggling in what were supposed to be their golden years. When Social Security was created back in 1935, it was never intended to be a complete retirement plan. It was designed as a supplement, a safety net meant to work alongside personal savings and employer pensions. The system was built to replace roughly 40% of your pre-retirement income. 40%. That means if you were earning $50,000 per year before retirement, Social Security was only ever designed to give you about $20,000 annually. Here's the thing that nobody explains clearly enough. That 40% replacement rate assumes you also have significant savings and possibly a pension to cover the other 60%. But pensions have largely disappeared from the American workplace. Personal savings rates have collapsed, and suddenly a program designed to cover less than half your expenses is expected to cover everything. The math simply doesn't work. It was never supposed to work this way. But the situation gets worse when you factor in how inflation has systematically eroded the purchasing power of these benefits over time. Social Security includes cost of living adjustments, known as COLA increases, which are supposed to help benefits keep pace with rising prices. Sounds reasonable in theory. In practice, these adjustments consistently fall short of actual inflation experienced by seniors. The COLA calculation is based on a consumer price index that doesn't accurately reflect how retirees actually spend their money. Seniors spend disproportionately more on healthcare and housing, two categories where prices have exploded far beyond general inflation rates. So while the government announces a 3% COLA increase, the actual costs seniors face might be climbing at 6% or 8% annually. Every single year, this gap compounds. A benefit that felt adequate in 2010 feels increasingly insufficient by 2025. Retirees aren't imagining that their money doesn't stretch as far anymore. The purchasing power of their benefits is genuinely shrinking, while the cost of everything they need keeps climbing. And here's the cruel irony that really gets me. The people who could have saved more money to supplement their Social Security often couldn't because wages stagnated for decades. You can't save money you never earned. Workers who spent their careers watching productivity climb while their paychecks stayed flat didn't have extra income to invest for retirement. They weren't being irresponsible. They were being squeezed from both directions. The system created a generation of retirees who were promised that if they worked hard and contributed faithfully, they'd be taken care of. Instead, they're discovering that the safety net has holes large enough to fall through. The checks keep coming, but they don't cover the bills. And that's before we even talk about the costs that hit after you retire. But the benefit amount is just the beginning of the financial nightmare facing American retirees. Because here's what nobody tells you about Medicare, the healthcare program that's supposed to protect seniors. It doesn't cover nearly as much as people assume. Medicare has premiums, deductibles, co-pays, and coverage gaps that can devastate a fixed income. The average retiree spends over $6,500 per year on out-of-pocket healthcare costs, even with Medicare coverage. That's more than $540 every single month that comes directly out of that Social Security check we just talked about. Dental work? Not covered. Vision care? Mostly not covered. Hearing aids that cost $3,000 or more? You're on your own. And then there's the taxation trap that feels almost deliberately cruel. If you were responsible enough to save money for retirement, or if you have a small pension, or any other income beyond Social Security, the government will tax your Social Security benefits. Benefits you already paid taxes on when you earned the money. Benefits that are barely enough to survive on in the first place. Up to 85% of your Social Security can become taxable income if you exceed certain thresholds. The system essentially punishes people for trying to be financially responsible. Let me paint you a picture of what this actually looks like in real life. Take that average Social Security benefit of $1,900 per month. After Medicare premiums are automatically deducted, you're down to about $1,720. Housing costs consume $1,200 or more if you're renting in most American cities. That leaves $520 for everything else. Food, utilities, transportation, phone, clothing, and any healthcare costs Medicare doesn't cover. $520 a month for everything. I've seen seniors make impossible choices that would break your heart. They cut pills in half to make prescriptions last longer. They keep the thermostat at 58 degrees in winter because heating costs too much. They eat canned soup for dinner 5 nights a week because fresh food is a luxury they can't afford. They skip doctor appointments because the copays add up too fast. These aren't lazy people who didn't plan. They're your parents, your grandparents, your neighbors who worked their entire lives and played by every rule society gave them. The shame and isolation make everything worse. Many seniors would rather suffer silently than admit they're struggling. They grew up in a generation that valued self-reliance above everything else. Asking for help feels like admitting failure. So they smile and say everything is fine while quietly drowning in bills they'll never be able to pay. It's like wearing a Rolex while living on ramen noodles, except the Rolex is their dignity and the ramen noodles are all they can actually afford. Here's the psychological trap that keeps this cycle spinning. After decades of contributing to Social Security, after building their entire retirement expectations around this system, seniors develop what I call retirement Stockholm syndrome. They become emotionally invested in defending the very program that's failing them. Admitting the system doesn't work feels like admitting their whole working life was built on a lie. When someone suggests Social Security isn't enough to live on, they don't hear a structural critique. They hear an attack on their life choices. They'll defend those monthly checks with the same passion they'd defend their family, even though those checks are keeping them trapped in poverty. The most heartbreaking part is the silence between generations. Parents don't tell their children how much they're struggling because they don't want to be burdens. Children assume their parents are fine because nobody talks about money. And so the cycle continues. Another generation enters the workforce believing the system will take care of them, just like the generation before. So there you have it. The Social Security scam isn't some shadowy conspiracy. It's a system designed for a different era, sold as something it was never meant to be, and left to slowly crush the people who trusted it most. Seniors aren't staying broke because they failed. They're staying broke because the math was never going to work in the first place. The next time you see that gray-haired worker behind the counter, remember they're not there because they want to be. They're there because the golden years turned out to be fool's gold. And maybe, just maybe, that's a conversation worth having before it's too late.